This is a Fox News Alert. Good evening. Welcome to the campus of Hofstra University on Long Island. We are just 3 hours away from the first presidential debate. I'm Brett Baer. The presidential race is now officially a dead heat after a series of new polls out today, and tonight looks to be a pivotal point in an already contentious battle for the White House, as the two nominees are face-to-face for the very first time. We start with Chief Political Correspondent Carl Cameron in the spin room, where the Trump team says they know he needs to make a positive impression tonight. Good evening, Carl.
Hi, Brett. And Donald Trump just arrived at the debate site here at Hofstra University just a short while ago. He'll do a quick walkthrough of the stage to familiarize himself with the surroundings. And for the last month or so, Trump has been rolling out steady policy positions. But for the most part, this race has been more about personality, fitness for office, and honesty. And as you said, right now in the polls, it's a toss-up.
Quinnipiac's debate day poll shows a virtual tie among likely voters within the poll's margin of error. Clinton's favored to win tonight's debate by 9 points, and among independents who can swing a race, Trump leads by 7 points. The Monmouth poll of likely voters nationally shows Clinton up 4, also within the margin. In the Bloomberg poll, Trump has a slight lead, again within the margin of error, with Clinton favored to perform better than Trump tonight by double digits. Trump's team is trying to lower expectations for him.
You let him be himself. This man is an extraordinary political thinker himself and a great communicator. And it doesn't mean he necessarily has the advantage in the debate, because she has obviously policy knowledge I don't have. I mean, she's been in government since I was a child. I mean, I don't remember a time she hasn't been in government in one way or another. So she's going to have obviously more specific knowledge than he has.
Advisors say he's loose, is ready to articulate his policy goals, show that he has the temperament to be president, and will catalog Hillary Clinton's deficiencies and unfitness for office. Running mate Mike Pence will attend the debate tonight, but hit the trail in New Hampshire this afternoon, boosting Trump.
First presidential debate between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton on the same stage. You know, when those two candidates take the stage for the first time in the same place, no more media filters. Tonight on the stage, the American people will literally hear from someone who personifies the failed status quo in our nation's capital.
And Trump will have some special guests in the audience tonight, including a Gold Star mom and a Benghazi survivor. And for the first time in the history of the Presidential Debate Commission's existence since 1988, he is very strongly expected to come to the spin room after the debate. That happens a lot in primary debates. It's never happened in a nomination debate since 1988, Brett.
There's a lot of things that have never happened in this presidential election. Carl Cameron from the spin room. Carl, thanks. Hillary Clinton is obviously no stranger to the debate stage, but nonetheless has been cramming for tonight's contest with her team. Fox News correspondent Jennifer Griffin reports on Clinton's rigorous preparations.
Like a lot of women, I have a tendency to over-prepare. I sweat the details.
So much so that Clinton spent 4 days doing mock debate prep in twice-a-day timed 90-minute sessions at a hotel in Rye Brook, New York, including on the afternoon of the debate. Aides have been on the offensive, saying Trump must be fact-checked in real time, quoting a PolitiFact study that found that nearly 70% of the claims Trump has made in this campaign proved to be false.
When you talk about her trust numbers, it's something she really takes seriously. And she's going to be talking tonight to the American voter about what she would do.
Clinton's choice of guests tonight, 4 women were invited to drive home that point. Lauren Manning, a 9/11 survivor who Clinton first met in the hospital when she was a senator working for health benefits for first responders and other survivors. Maxine Outerbridge, a single mom who got help from the Children's Health Insurance Program that Clinton helped create. Anastasia Somoza, born with cerebral palsy, she's worked with Clinton on disability rights since she was 9 years old. Aletha Williams, a young woman from the Bronx and longtime pen pal of Clinton since she was First Lady. This as new state polls in key states show the race a virtual tie. Clinton is down by 1 point, 41 to 42% in Colorado among likely voters, according to a new CNN ORC poll. 13% say they are voting for Gary Johnson. Clinton has not visited Colorado since August and pulled ads there last month because she was leading by so much. In Pennsylvania, her lead has shrunk to just 1 point, 45 to 44%. In Pennsylvania, 79% say their mind is made up. 21% say it isn't. In Virginia, Clinton is leading, but that lead has shrunk to just 6 points, with Libertarian Gary Johnson taking 15% of the vote.
I'm going to be on the very edge of my seat taking notes because I got to prep for a debate next week. So
Her running mate, Senator Tim Kaine, will be at an LGBT debate watch party with the Human Rights Campaign in Orlando, Florida tonight.
Aides tell us she did debate prep right up until the last moment. Her sparring partner, Philippe Reines, did everything he could to become Donald Trump, right down to the cufflinks, Brett.
You know, Jennifer, we were talking to Jen Palmieri, Director of Communications of the Clinton campaign. It was so interesting to hear her say that this could be boring in the first 30 minutes. And I said, you know what, we're not going to use that as a tease for the debate. But, you know, there's different strategies here depending on what Donald Trump is on the stage.
Well, they expect him to come out and perhaps compliment her, and they are prepared for that, and they're prepared for her to lay out 30 minutes of policy prescriptions.
It'll be interesting to see. Jennifer, thank you. Well, now to the third person on stage tonight, the moderator, Lester Holt. The role of a moderator can be tough, I know, and both campaigns have made public appeals about Holt. To talk about what we are likely to see tonight, I'm joined now by Fox News media analyst and host of Fox's Media Buzz, Howard Kurtz. Good evening, Howard. What do you think?
Well, good evening, Brett. There's tremendous pressure on Lester Holt of NBC. To be fair to both sides, first Donald Trump telling me and others that Holt and the other moderators will be unfair to him. And now the Clinton campaign, led by campaign chief Robbie Moog, saying it's Lester Holt's job to fact-check Donald Trump because Donald Trump spews so many lies and it can't be on Hillary Clinton to do that. Traditionally, that's not the role of the moderator in these general election debates. Traditionally, you follow the Jim Lehrer model. You frame tough questions, let the candidates go at it, and get out of the way.
You know, Howie, we were talking about what is going to transpire and whether he is going to get in the mix. And do you think that the Commander-in-Chief Forum and Matt Lauer's bombardment by a lot in the media who follow media somehow affects Lester Holt?
Well, Trump certainly thinks so. I think Lester is a no-nonsense guy who will resist that kind of pressure. At the same time, it's not just pressure coming from the partisans. You look at the mainstream media, Brett. Yesterday alone, New York Times, Los Angeles Times, Washington Post, and Politico all carrying stories about the many lies, exaggerations, and half-truths in their telling. Some of this was nitpicking, some of this was fair, that Donald Trump had committed in the past week. So that has set a kind of an expectation that Lester Holt has to, wrestle Donald Trump to the ground. That's not his job. He needs not to get down to the weeds. He does need to ask follow-up questions if either candidate says something that seems factually untrue, or he can invite the opposing candidate, 60 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever, to take them on. I remember that the people are tuning in to see Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, not to see Lester Holt debate either one of them.
Yeah, and very quickly, Howard, it does track with what was on the Clinton website before those stories.
Am I talking to this camera?
About challenging Donald Trump's statements of past.
To that camera.
That's very much a Clinton theme, and at the same time, no matter what Lester Holt does here tonight, Brett, he will get criticized by partisans on both sides. That I can predict.
All right, Howie, thank you. So what do you think? What do you think of the role of the moderator should be tonight? Let me know on Twitter, @BrettBaer. You can use the hashtag special report. From the moderator to the candidates. First up, the Republican Donald Trump, who has fought his way through 11 primary debates with, at times, a very crowded stage, as you remember. Tonight is the first time he'll be on a stage with just one opponent. Trump has been studying briefing books, but the campaign says he has not been holding the typical mock debate sessions that candidates traditionally use. The businessman's charisma, including jokes and occasional insults, served him well in the Republican primaries, but the real question is, can it work on the main stage tonight? But Trump has said if Clinton treated him with respect, he would do the same. For a preview, let's bring in New York Congressman, Republican Chris Collins, the first congressman to endorse Donald Trump. Well, Congressman.
Yeah, Brett, good to be with you.
What do you think, setting the table for tonight?
I think we're going to see President Trump show up tonight. He will be presidential. I think if someone is going to throw the first punch, it's going to have to be Hillary. I guess we all, on one hand, hope she does. We'll see what happens. On the other hand, let's stay on the issues. But Donald Trump contrasts his vision for America, the change agent, that people can imagine America working again, safe again, our inner cities safe, getting our economy going. You know, that's the Trump that's going to be speaking to the hearts and minds of America, making it a better America for our children and our grandchildren, and making America great again for all Americans. And then in that give and take, you'll see a contrast to the status quo candidate, Hillary Clinton, who said she'll be a third term of Barack Obama.
So he didn't do a lot of mock debates. Did he do any mock debates?
I don't know that he did any mock debates from the sense of Hillary over-preparing. He knows the issues. He knows what it's going to take to get America going. I think you can over-prepare, and I think Donald Trump's style is better to not be over-prepared. Hillary is one who has to prepare to the nth degree. I don't think that would serve Donald Trump well. He's very good on his feet. He's very quick to pivot. That's not Hillary's style.
You know, there's a lot of this preview, and obviously it's all going to come out in now under 3 hours. But if, as the Clinton folks say, she kind of plays it cool for the first part there, and she plays to the camera and says her vision for America and what she believes, eventually is that going to get to Donald Trump? I mean, is he going to want to kind of push back?
No, I think that would play into him. If she talks about her vision for the future, which is status quo, when 2/3 of the public knows the country's moving in the wrong direction, that's a softball pitch to Donald Trump to say, you know, Mrs. Clinton, the economy hasn't budged in 8 years. We're going to bring the jobs back stolen by Mexico and China. You know, we're going to have fundamental tax reform to get investment in this country, the private sector creating jobs. You want to tax the private businesses out of business. I mean, I think that contrast would play right into him at the policy level that's 2 levels deep, not 10 levels deep. But I think that would get a lot of heads nodding in America.
All right, I want to raise an issue that has not been raised that much, and that is talk about the national debt and the deficit. Neither one of these candidates talks about that much at all. And you had former Indiana Governor Mitch Daniels put out a statement. He is the responsible federal budget co-chair. He said, "We have a moral obligation to ensure we don't leave a mountain of debt to our children and grandchildren, crippling their economic future and calling into question the very credibility of our democratic decision-making." A fellow Republican there saying that your party's nominee needs to maybe say more about the debt and deficit.
Well, I think to me it's fairly simple in Donald Trump world and mine. If we get the economy growing at 4% a year, which Donald Trump's talked about, after 8 years of 1.5% and not even 2% growth, it puts people back to work. It gets them off of the entitlement programs, gets them off of food stamps, and it's amazing what growth can do at 4% a year to bring revenue in at the same time cutting expenses. So that dynamic model will, in fact, working with Speaker Ryan, we'll get our budget balanced. And I'm confident we can do that. But we have to grow our way to success and balance. We can't continue to shrink our way.
Even though he doesn't talk about the debt side or the entitlement side that much on the draft.
I think he's talked about, well, of course, the economy is going to grow. The entitlements are going to drop. That's almost a, and of course, as you grow your business and your margins and profits are there, and in this case, people drop off on the entitlement rolls, we'll fix ourselves.
Last thing, quickly, the politics. The polls are trending Donald Trump's way, both on the state polls and the national polls. But you have David Plouffe, who was on another cable channel, he used to be obviously President Obama's campaign manager, saying this about the status of the race. Take a listen.
But none of these polls accurately do is to look at what a good campaign does is say you have a very good sense of who's likely to vote. My belief is Johnson and Stein's vote number will not be as high as it is right now. So when you look at that, getting Trump to a win number in Pennsylvania, that win number is 50, 49, or 48, I just think mathematically
Are
it's
you
impossible.
assuming?
basically saying that the vote for the Libertarian and the Green Party candidate will go towards Clinton in the end, and you can't get there. It's impossible.
Well, the thing that Clinton doesn't have is any energy behind her campaign. The Trump people can't wait to vote, and so I think at the end of the day, that energy behind Donald Trump is something you can't poll, and I actually do think the millennials either stay home or they will be voting for Johnson and Stein. I think the momentum is with Trump. The energy is with Trump. Hillary's got a serious problem in trying to get people with any energy to turn out and vote for her.
Congressman Collins, we appreciate your time.
Brett, always good to be with you.
We'll take a live look inside the debate hall where in just a few hours the candidates will face off. And you know, the stage, we'll give you a tour up close and personal there down on the floor. In just a moment, throughout the show, we'll take you to some different places here on the campus of Hofstra University, which, by the way, is the only place that has held a debate in 3 consecutive presidential cycles. And they are very proud of that here at Hofstra University. Now to the other corner of this debate stage, Democrat Hillary Clinton, who has participated in more debates than any presidential candidate in recent history, with more than 40 contests under her belt, counting Senate debates in 2000 and 2006, and Democratic primary showdowns, then Senator Obama in 2008, and Bernie Sanders this time around. Clinton has made it very clear she's doing the traditional prep work with mock debate sessions going well into the night, we're told. Aides have said she is preparing for 2 Trumps, as we've mentioned, the measured and serious version and the one who's more freewheeling and makes personal attacks. Campaign officials say Clinton is also making a positive case and will for her candidacy and not just reminding voters of her rivals' at times controversial comments. Joining me now, representing the Clinton camp, is California Congressman Xavier Becerra, who also serves as the House Democratic Caucus Chairman. Thank you for being here.
Brett, good to be with you.
Well, what about it? With it closing in on the time, what does Secretary Clinton have to do?
I think she just has to show folks who she really is, how she can be leader on day one for this country, that she is fit to be our commander-in-chief. She's ready for the job. She's proven it over the years by all the things that she's accomplished. She's the one that helped greenlight the raid on Osama bin Laden, that captured him finally. She's the one that helped make sure that 8 million children in America, as senator, she made sure that 8 million children in America had health insurance. She's the one, as senator for New York, made sure that our first responders and the victims and families of the victims after 9/11 had a chance to have their country and their government do right by them. And so she's ready on day one to be president of the United States. I think on the other hand, we have to take a look at Donald Trump and wonder what he would be. He still hasn't explained it. Lots of stuff he's still hiding. So we need someone who's ready to be commander-in-chief and president on day one.
How much of this debate will be about kind of probing in, Donald Trump to kind of pull him out and talk about his policies, and how much will be about her laying out her case for why she wants to be commander-in-chief and what she'll do?
I think you're going right to the nut of it. The secretary has spent many, many years in her various roles in our government showing what she can do. So she can point to those things, and you can see the track record. Unfortunately, with Donald Trump, he says one thing and then does another, or says another, and we still don't know yet what his tax returns look like. We don't know about this so-called secret plan to defeat ISIS that he keeps talking about. He keeps telling us he's going to now consult with the generals that he criticizes. We still don't know much about his health, and we don't know so many things about Donald Trump. And it would be good for this debate to finally give the American people a chance to understand who Donald Trump is and what he would do.
Does a boring, without fireworks debate hurt Hillary Clinton?
Not if she gets out there and talks directly to the American people about how she's going to build this country, create more jobs from the middle out, instead of have it trickle down the way Donald Trump says by giving tax cuts to the wealthy and seeing if it gets down to the middle class and working class. She's talking about middle class. I think she would call them the real job creators, not the wealthiest, because they're the ones, if the middle class has disposable money, they can buy that house, exchange, get a new car, buy that dishwasher that broke down to the clothes washer. That creates jobs, because somebody has to manufacture those dishwashers, someone has to repair that car or make that car. All those things help create more jobs in America.
All right, you know this campaign has at times been very contentious, yes, and words have been used frankly, on both sides. This is Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid today on the Senate floor.
Donald Trump is a racist. Racist is a term I don't throw around lightly. Those who refuse to denounce Donald Trump's actions as racism are complicit in propagating and normalizing his hate. It's time for Republicans to stop closing their eyes to Donald Trump's racism.
So basically, if you couldn't hear it there, Donald Trump is a racist, and anybody who doesn't say it is complicit. So is Donald Trump a racist?
I will tell you that when Donald Trump said that a young man born in Indiana grew up, got an education the hard way, became a judge for this country, and Donald Trump, that man could not be a fair judge simply because of his Mexican heritage, to me, that's racist. I'm of Mexican heritage as well. My parents came from Mexico. I am the first in my family to have an opportunity to go to college. I'm the son of immigrants. When Donald Trump tells Judge Curiel, and he's essentially telling me that I can't do my job well because of my Mexican heritage, that's racist.
He says that was about that case, and he's gone on to explain that. I want to ask you about...
Brett, what he explained was that the reason the judge couldn't do a good job wasn't because some flaws in the case or some flaws in the way the judge was ruling. It was because he was a Mexican
And there
heritage.
are Republicans who have talked about that being trouble.
Paul Ryan even said that.
But I want to ask you about immigration, and the question, is Hillary Clinton for sanctuary cities?
Hillary Clinton's for comprehensive immigration reform, a full fix to a system. I think you and I and everyone watching would agree our immigration system is broken and we got to do something about it. She is going to put forward a plan in their first 100 days, working bipartisanly with both houses in Congress to get something done. She knows how to do it. She was in the Senate before. She bipartisanly. It has to be a bipartisan solution.
But sanctuary cities are part of the solution.
Well, sanctuary cities is very different from what you do to fix the immigration system. Sanctuary cities is a program to make sure that you're not getting mothers at a grocery store and deporting them simply because they are immigrants. It's making sure that we go after criminals, not mothers and children.
We just couldn't get an answer this week, so we appreciate you coming on.
You got it.
Congressman, thank you very much.
Thank you, Brett.
Up next, the FBI has released a new batch of crime statistics, and it paints a scary picture. Stay with us here. Big night here at Hofstra University. Now to some other news. 9 people were shot and wounded, one critically, in Houston when a lawyer who had issues with his law firm began firing randomly at drivers. The suspect turned his guns on police officers when they arrived on scene. He was shot and killed by police. Multiple weapons were found at that scene. Authorities say the suspect in the deadly Washington State mall shooting has confessed to killing 5 people. Arkan Satan was arrested following a 24-hour manhunt, faces 5 charges of premeditated murder. Authorities have asked that he be held on a $2 million bond. Meantime, Charlotte police are signaling tougher rules on marchers are coming following the arrest of 11 protesters overnight in the latest demonstration following the death of Keith Lamont Scott last week. In total, more than 70 arrests have been made in the Charlotte area. The statistics are in, and violent crime is up in the United States. The FBI released the crime numbers from 2015 and shows a marked rise from the year before, including murders spiking by more than 10%. Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen breaks down the troubling statistics.
Powered by a spiraling homicide rate in Chicago, Crime in the United States, the annual publication by the FBI, recorded a rise in the number of violent crimes in 2015 of 3.9% and a jump in the number of murders of 10.8%. Rape increased by 6.3%, aggravated assault by 4.6%, and robbery by almost 1.5%. Still, the Attorney General said last year marked the 3rd lowest for violent crime in the last 2 decades.
It demonstrates that when law enforcement and communities present a united front against violence, we can make progress.
The Fair Punishment Project, an initiative of the Harvard Law School, said the numbers demonstrate America to be safer under President Obama. No year during George W. Bush's, Bill Clinton's, George H.W. Bush's, or Ronald Reagan's presidency was as safe as 2015, the project said. Violent crime in the U.S. is near historic lows, and the country is dramatically safer than it was 45 years ago, 25 years ago, and 10 years ago. The White House touted those figures, but backed off when asked directly if Mr. Obama was responsible for today's low crime levels.
I don't think that there is any one direct causation that we can draw, but I think the president is proud of the positive contribution to this effort that his administration has made.
654 emergency.
In addition to Chicago, site of 488 homicides last year and another 7 this weekend, 6 cities, Baltimore, Cleveland, Houston, Milwaukee, Nashville, and Washington, D.C., accounted for half the year-to-year surge.
As opposed to 30 years ago when I was a young cop and the Saturday Night Special was on the street, they're using weapons that produce a tremendous amount of firepower in a short period of time, which is increasing lethality. You can't argue that. It's increasing lethality.
And while President Obama's time in the White House is running out, his spokesman Josh Earnest today refused to rule out the idea of the president using executive action before his term ends to restrict firearm sales. Brett.
James Rosen live on the North Lawn. James, thank you. The government's key witness in the George Washington Bridge lane closing case testified today that he interpreted an email from one of the defendants saying, quote, time for some traffic problems as an order, and that he immediately told New Jersey Governor Chris Christie's campaign manager. Christie's former deputy chief of staff has claimed the email was a joke. Christie, who is in charge of the Trump transition team, has not been charged and has repeatedly denied knowing about the scheme. Rough day to start the week on Wall Street. The Dow dropped 167. The S&P 500 lost 19. The Nasdaq was down 48. The Syrian foreign minister thinks an internationally brokered ceasefire is still viable. Others are more skeptical as Russia and the United States spar over who's to blame and what can be done in the war-torn country. Correspondent Connor Powell reports on the latest carnage.
From the air and on the ground, Aleppo has been relentlessly pounded by Russian and Syrian government forces since the ceasefire negotiated by Washington and Moscow collapsed last week. Much of the rebel-held city now just rubble. The bombardment, the most intense since the Syrian war began in 2011. Hundreds of civilians have been killed and wounded in recent days, hospitals and emergency services struggling to cope. The carnage igniting a war of words at the United Nations Sunday night, with the U.S. ambassador accusing Russia of war crimes for its use of bunker-busting bombs over Aleppo.
What Russia is sponsoring and doing is not counterterrorism, it is barbarism.
Russia's ambassador, in turn, blamed the U.S. and Gulf Arab-backed moderate opposition forces for the breakdown of the ceasefire, claiming rebels were holding civilians hostage in Aleppo.
Hundreds of armed groups are being armed. The territory of the country is being bombed indiscriminately, and bringing peace is almost an impossible task now.
The battle attracting fighters from across the region. American officials tell Fox News as many as 3,000 Iranian-backed Hezbollah and Shiite fighters have arrived to the besieged city to support the Syrian regime. No matter the cost to Syria's civilian population, Assad and Russia appear determined to retake Aleppo from the rebels, who Syria's foreign minister claims aren't interested in a truce. With the international community deadlocked about how to end the fighting, the bloodshed looks set to continue in Aleppo, the last major stronghold of Syria's opposition.
The Pentagon said Monday it has no current plans to protect the civilians of Aleppo from further violence. Instead, the U.S. will continue to focus its efforts against ISIS. Brett?
Connor Powell in our Middle East newsroom. Connor, thank you. Up next, an all-star panel, expanded panel, breaking down what to expect tonight from the two candidates. But first, an inside look at how Twitter is preparing for tonight's debate. All right, this is the media room where all the reporters are getting ready for the big night here at Hofstra University. Let's go over and see our friends at Twitter. Adam Sharp.
Hey, Brett.
Big night tonight.
Yes, absolutely a big night tonight. First night in 2012, 10 million tweets. We expect to top that tonight. But the big question will be, what will people be tweeting about?
Now, you have a look back at the year, really.
Absolutely. So here we're looking at tweets about Hillary Clinton. Biggest moment, the convention, but big spikes around that FBI press conference on her emails and more recently about her health.
And Donald Trump, a prolific Twitter user.
Donald Trump, similar story here. His biggest night, Republican convention, but questions about his candidacy by the establishment wing of the party, Mitt Romney's press conference earlier in the year, and protests and rallies at his rallies competing with him.
All right, issues. I see foreign affairs is number one.
Foreign affairs driven really by questions of ISIS and terrorism. Number one, driven by events like the bombings in New York and New Jersey. Race climbing recently because of more police shootings and those protests in Charlotte. But number five, the economy, slow and steady. It always comes back to the pocketbook. while these other issues rise and fall with the news cycle, the economy always in the top 5.
All right, at Brett Baer.
At Adam S.
All right, special report continues after this.
Polls out today say it's tied nationally. We have tremendous momentum, more and more people every day. Despite the overwhelming bias in the national media, more and more people every day are joining this movement to make America great again.
That was Vice Presidential nominee Mike Pence talking today about the newest polls, the average of polls. The Fox special report average of the last 5 polls that we trust has Hillary Clinton up about 2 points here. But there have been several polls that are essentially tied. And there are a number of state polls that are looking different in Colorado, in Pennsylvania, all in Trump's direction. Let's bring in our expanded panel. Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard. Karen Tumulty, national political correspondent for the Washington Post. Mara Liasson, national political correspondent for National Public Radio. And Monica Crowley, editor and columnist for the Washington Times. By the way, if you haven't noticed, I went from outside to inside here in the debate hall. It was a bit of a walk, but we got here. So let me start with you, Mara. Your sense of these polls and a trend. Is a trend starting to show here?
Well, it looks like it is. The national polls are tightening, and some of the key states that Donald Trump needs to win, like Pennsylvania and Colorado, those are states that he would have to get over and above Florida, Ohio, Iowa, North Carolina. But when you talk to people in the Clinton campaign, they don't see a change. They think their position is still pretty stable.
Monica, your thoughts as we get ready for this debate tonight?
Well, I think Donald Trump needs to do 2 things, thematically and tonally, Brett. First of all, thematically, if you go back to Ronald Reagan in 1980, he ran on 3 major core themes: cutting taxes, reducing the size of government, and defeating the communists. No matter what question he got in any debate, he found a way to bring it back to those 3 themes. I think Donald Trump needs to do the same thing with his 4 core themes of law and order, economic populism, strong national defense, and defeating the corrupt, rigged system. Tonally, I think it's really important for Donald Trump to be a happy warrior, to take this restoration of America on with joy. And also, if he goes after Mrs. Clinton, he's got to make sure that he does it more in a tone of sorrow and sadness rather than in anger.
Karen?
Karen?
Oh, I guess you can't hear us.
I'm sorry,
We're
Brett, I'm
fix
getting
that.
no
Steve?
sound at all in my earpiece.
Go ahead, Steve. Why don't you weigh in?
Steve could
We'll
be my
fix the IFB for
simultaneous
Karen.
translator here.
Steve, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you, Brett. I'll jump in. Look, I think the big thing here is expectations, and people have said this before. But if you look at polling that's been done, there are 5 separate polls that show that Americans think that Hillary Clinton is going to win this thing, somewhere between 9 points and 14 points. People think she's going to win. I think that puts a heavy burden on her to basically make the case and to present herself as something new, which I think is very hard for her to do after having spent 3 decades in public life. So I think she's got a very tall burden. And Donald Trump, of course, as we've talked about before, has relatively low expectations, in part because of the way that Hillary Clinton has chosen to go after him, arguing in effect that he's dangerous to the country, that he can't put sentences together, that he's so far outside the mainstream, he can't really be a normal mainstream political candidate.
But, I think that given the contrast between these 2 candidates, this is one of the rare general election debates that really isn't so much about who wins and who loses and who does the persuasion. I think more so than we've seen in general election campaigns, this is going to be where both of these candidates are talking to their own supporters and really trying to motivate them to actually show up. And because this is, especially Hillary Clinton, the latest polls have an enthusiasm gap for her. I think this is about convincing your own supporters of the urgency of this election.
All right, well, what about the bar, Mara? Where is the bar set for this debate? The expectations as we have now. Both campaigns have been talking about it.
Yeah, I think the bar is really different. The bar for Donald Trump is pretty low. He has to look like a plausible president. He has to surprise people who think he's going to show up and be a insult comic, kind of a monster, the image of him that he's helped create for himself, and certainly the Clinton campaign has fostered too. I think the bar for her is almost impossibly high to meet. She has to show that she's honest, trustworthy, likable. She has to make an affirmative case for herself, undermine him, and all the time not being aggressive or harsh or any of the things that penalize female candidates on a debate stage. It's harder than doing everything Fred Astaire does, only backwards in high heels. I don't know how she could ever hurdle that bar.
And Monica, what about Donald Trump's bar?
Well, as I mentioned, I think the burden is actually less on Donald Trump tonight than it is on Mrs. Clinton, for obvious reasons. I think if Mrs. Clinton falters in any way, if she's seized by a coughing attack, or if she takes one of Donald Trump's buzzsaw moves right in the jaw and has trouble recovering, she's going to have a tough time. Look, Mrs. Clinton has yet to offer a compelling rationale for her candidacy beyond just, I'm a woman, and or it's my turn. So tonight she has to offer that rationale, and she also has to offer a clear vision for where she wants to take the country. I don't think that after nearly 30 years on the national scene, she can convince Americans now that she's honest and trustworthy. So what she needs to do is try to reassure Americans in terms of core competence. Donald Trump, on the other hand, has to reassure Americans that he will be a responsible president and leader.
Well, the latest polls today have about 84% saying they are going to watch this debate tonight. So we are going to see some big numbers, something tells me. And something also tells me that we may have the vice presidential nominee here in the House at Hofstra University. We're going to try to grab him, actually, after a quick break. But first, a look at where the two candidates, the two nominees, will be going head-to-head here in the studio. In the debate hall, about 1,100 seats, invited guests from both campaigns, from Hofstra University. They will be told one thing: be quiet. Don't be a factor. This is not like a Republican primary debate or a Democratic primary debate where the crowd factors in. They will be told to be quiet. Everything's negotiated, actually. This is the stage. Lester Holt's desk, the moderator, that's where he'll be. Everything has been talked about, negotiated, even the temperature here. It's a little chilly in this room. And as you look at the stage, take a look at the lecterns. On the right side, that's Hillary Clinton's. It is shorter. She is shorter. On the left side, Donald Trump. This is where they'll stand for this big night. Special report continues after this. Back here at Hofstra University in Hempstead, New York, you're looking at the debate hall, the big night. It is debate night in America, and we are pleased to be joined by Vice Presidential nominee Governor Mike Pence, joining us from actually just down the road at the Spin Room, a couple of blocks away. Governor, thanks for being here. Your thoughts on this night?
You bet. Well, it's just incredibly exciting for me and my family to be here tonight, because I know the American people tonight are going to see the man that I get to talk to every day, that I can campaign shoulder to shoulder with. This is a good man. It's going to be a great president of the United States, and I'm looking forward to 90 minutes unfiltered, where the American people are going to hear his vision to make America great again.
Yeah, Governor, how much were you in the loop about how his preparations and what he was up to as far as practicing for this night?
Well, I think Donald Trump has been preparing for tonight for his entire life. I mean, this is a man who's a builder, who's spent a life creating a great business, and I really think that the process that he's been through, while I've made suggestions all along the way, has really been an effort to take advantage of that authenticity that he's brought to this campaign, made it possible for him to enter a 17-way primary and come out on top, and I know that that authenticity and that sincerity is going to come through today, and I'm excited for 9 o'clock to get here, and excited for the opportunity for the American people to hear again that this really isn't a choice so much between two candidates. It's a choice between two visions. It's really a choice between two futures, and tonight's going to be an important night in laying that case out to the American people.
One more thing about this debate night. Talking to senior aides with the Clinton campaign, they say the first 30 minutes is going to be crucial. They say Secretary Clinton is going to lay out her vision of why she wants to be president and what she will do, and they're not going to waste time trying to draw out Donald Trump in the first 30 minutes at least. What do you think about that?
Well, I sure hope both candidates are given the opportunity to lay out their vision for this country. Really, Brett, this is a choice between whether we're going to stay with the policies that have weakened America's place in the world, stifled our economy, walked away from our most cherished constitutional traditions, or whether we're going to turn around and go back up the hill to a stronger America at home and abroad, a growing America, an America that cherishes our constitutional principles. And I think the opportunity that Donald Trump has tonight is to really lay out that vision, and frankly, as both candidates lay that out, I think we're going to have a great night.
I want to ask you about a couple of specifics, some news that's happening up in Washington. The president vetoed this 9/11 bill that would allow 9/11 families to sue Saudi Arabia or countries who potentially support terrorist acts like the 9/11 attacks. He vetoed that bill, but now there's a consideration for an override up on Capitol Hill. Donald Trump has said he stands with the 9/11 families and called the veto one of the worst things President Obama has done to those families. Yet there are many Republicans, as you know, Governor Pence, that are concerned about this and say that this could threaten national security. What do you say to them?
Well, I was in Washington, D.C. on September the 11th. I was at Ground Zero about a week later, and I think the justice demands that the families be able to hold accountable those who should be held to account, and the role of the Saudi Arabian government and the fact that of the 19 hijackers, the overwhelming majority were from Saudi Arabia, I think all invites a day in court. And so Donald Trump and I strongly stand with the families on 9/11. My hope is Congress will take up this measure and override the president's veto.
And last thing, we've talked a couple of times before about really what the economic plan is. But what has not been laid out is what the ISIS plan is. And the Clinton folks are chomping at the bit, I think, to use that line that it's a secret plan that they say is Donald Trump has not laid out. Will he lay it out tonight?
Well, I think the plan that Donald Trump has laid out is really a plan to confront radical Islamic terrorism and also to take the fight to the enemy at the source. Donald Trump laid out that vision in Youngstown, Ohio, Brett. And the last thing that he said we should do is tell the enemy what our plans are. Hillary Clinton has actually already announced that she's not going to allow ground forces to be introduced into the theater. We've already obviously got about 6,000 forces in Iraq and in the theater right now. But Donald Trump is going to provide the kind of leadership that says, here's the goal, here's the mission, here's his ideas for accomplishing that mission. And as he said, he's going to bring together our military leaders in the first 30 days of a Trump-Pence administration, get their ideas, and we're going to hunt down and we're going to destroy ISIS at its source. But I think the difference here is going to be the American people are going to see this broad-shouldered leadership tonight that is going to say, here are the goals for our country at home and abroad, and here's a leader in Donald Trump that's going to have the determination and the ability to drive our country toward those goals.
Governor Pence, we appreciate you stopping by, even from just the spin room, and we look forward to seeing you tonight.
Thank you, Brett.
Final thoughts on this big night after a quick break. But first, social media has changed the political landscape, and Facebook has some interesting features ready for tonight's broadcast. All right, this is the spin room, where the campaigns will come to spin reporters. Let's go talk to Facebook and our friend Robert D'Onofrio. Robert, how are you?
Excellent, Brett.
We
Nice
talked
to see
at the
you.
conventions. What's driving the talk now on Facebook?
So over the last 30 days, the top 5 issues on voters' minds on Facebook, number 1 are racial issues, not surprisingly driven by conversation, especially in the Tulsa area and in the Charlotte area as well. Second is Homeland Security and terrorism. Government ethics is third. Religion is number 4, and the economy remains constant and steady at number 5.
All right, what about the candidates?
Looking at the candidates over the last 30 days, both candidates have a lot of conversation on Facebook. Trump, about 34 million people have had about 370 million interactions over the last 30 days. Turning to Hillary, she's got about 28.5 million people talking about her. And if you look at how those 28.5 million people have been talking about her over the last 30 days, we see a spike here in the middle when the concerns about her health were in the news.
So how many tonight, do you think?
Tonight, I wouldn't be surprised if we get over 40, maybe 45 million people talking about the debate on Facebook.
Wow. Robert, thank you.
My pleasure.
Special report continues after this. Finally tonight, just over 2 hours to go until Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton face each other on this stage right behind me. This debate hall will be filled. The lights will go on. Tens of millions of you will be watching. We hope you'll watch it with us. Megyn Kelly will join me on set just before the debate, about 8:50. And then we'll have all the wrap-up afterwards. Thanks for inviting us into your home tonight. That is it for this special report. A big debate night. Fair, balanced, and still unafraid. On the record and continuing coverage of the first presidential debate with my good friend, Brit Hume. It starts right now.